Hi there, welcome. I've got an interesting topic today. Is God real? Over the years, this topic has attracted a lot of questions and controversy, so I thought I'd share my journey and what I've really experienced. My first real exposure to Christianity and really to God was when I was 7 years old. I went to this Christian camp, and I can remember everyone in my dorm went up to the front to ask Jesus into their lives. At the time, I remember being very annoyed, as I didn't want anything to do with Christianity. Having been brought up in a very religious environment and seeing the hypocrisy of it all. But look, I really needed acceptance of my peers, and so I reluctantly went up and did the same. I just didn't want to be the odd one out. I can distinctly remember the feeling that came over me at the time. It's difficult to describe, but it was like a peaceful, tangible love, really, that enveloped me. I believe now this was God's way of showing me that He was real. There would be a time where I would come back to really renew my faith, and this would be when I'd reached my final rock bottom and was really desperate. In my teens, God showed Himself to be very real through some quite amazing circumstances, which I simply couldn't put down to coincidence at all. The first thing that happened was my mother rang me crying, and of course I was using drugs at the time and had consumed quite a bit of alcohol on that night, and she said to me, "If you go out on your motorcycle, God has shown me that you are going to have a bad accident and you're going to die." Look, I was far away from any faith at the time, and I laughed at her and made some derogatory comments like, "Oh, did God send an angel fluttering down on wings to tell you this?" And look, I was quite nasty. But in the end, she cried and pleaded with me to come round, and she said, "At least get a helmet," as she knew I was riding around without one. I rode round to her house, basically really just to shut her up. About 10 minutes after I picked up that helmet, I had a major accident. I broke my leg, I was hospitalised, and I needed to have my clothes cut off me to have my injuries treated. I can distinctly remember the ambulance officer. He picked up the helmet and looked at me and said, "If you weren't wearing this, you'd be dead right now." I knew for sure that this wasn't a coincidence, as my mother had never said anything like that to me again. The next incident was when my father, who was walking through the house, he felt God had spoke to him. He later described this to me as a very strong thought impression that he simply really just had to act on. Now, my father wasn't one of those people that was intuitive or really sensed the vibe, so to speak, so I simply couldn't put it down to that. As he walked through the house, he felt this strong compulsion to go into my sister's room and pull out her bottom drawer and look under it. My father would never go into my sister's room, much less open up any of her drawers. He did this and found all my drugs and needles and money hidden there. And look, I have no doubt that that was God showing me He was real. In my late teens, I had a wonderful pastor and his dear wife in Queenstown basically picked me up from being homeless, took me into their house, stood up in court for me and looked after me while I was detoxing from, and I was terribly ill from a horrible drug addiction. I stayed there for about 3 months, where I was exposed to a loving Christian environment, which helped me to see what true Christianity and love was all about. Look, sadly, I just couldn't stay clean at the time, and the compulsion to use was simply too much, and I found myself constantly relapsing, and in the end, I just left. What I really needed was inner healing and a clear path forward, showing me the process of dealing with all that internal pain and then developing into the true man that I was really meant to be, rebuilding my life with confidence, knowing my true identity, which, look, I've talked about a lot in my videos. Sadly, look, I wasn't ready for any of that. I just hadn't hit my final rock bottom to truly even think about starting on this process of change. When I did hit my final rock bottom and I ended up in rehab, and look, I turned 38 years old in rehab there, I finally got really, really desperate to want to change. And having been a drug addict for so many years and so deeply entrenched in that mindset and lifestyle and way of, it was like a real way of thinking, I realised in my own strength, my chances of making it were, well, they were really remote. And the stats of old users like myself getting clean weren't good. I can remember reflecting on my youth and my past experiences that had showed me that God was real. In the end, I was so desperate to change, I cried out to God and I said how much I needed His help. And although I knew there was a God, He wasn't really real to me, and I needed all the help I could get. I cried out to Him in desperation, and the only words that I could get out through the tears was, "Oh God, oh God." It was just a very emotional time, and that was my prayer, really, asking Him into my life. I can distinctly remember this as if it were yesterday, as I'd finally come to a crossroads and a rock bottom, and the pain of addiction was worse than the pain of change. As time went on, I began to notice that most people who had a successful recovery in their lives and had gone on a spiritual journey, that they all seemed to have a relationship with their Creator God that gave them peace and happiness. I saw a real strength in them and the ability to be successful and overcome huge challenges and obstacles in their life through their faith. This is quite a story coming from someone like myself who was very anti-Christian. I really believed that they were just a bunch of religious nuts. And although I knew there was a God, I was one of the most unlikely people to ever make Him part of my life. I can remember being invited to church and saying, "Mate, if I came to your church, the walls would fall in." And here I am today with a strong faith that has so benefited my life and brought so much happiness and peace and success. And it's given me a total new meaning to life. I don't feel alone anymore. I have a spiritual friend and partner, God, and He is walking side by side with me every day. So is God real? And is there a spiritual component to our lives? Well, in my experience, the answer is absolutely yes. I have found Him to be very real, and I've seen so many more things that have confirmed Him to be real to me over the years that I simply don't have time to talk about today. Just apart from that, why do we sense things? Why were we born with a conscience and an intuitive sense about us? I believe we all have deep within us a sense of God and something, and we know that there is a Creator. If I were to recommend anything that would help you on your journey, it would be not to become religious, but to find a relationship with God. And check this out for yourself, as it's brought so much peace and joy to my life. It's brought guidance, it's brought love, it's given me the courage and the real strength to change and grow into the man that I was always really meant to be. And you too can experience this for yourself and see that it's real and that it really does work. Thank you.